There we go. There we go. Now we've got some audio. We've got, I don't know that it's a complex setup, but it's unusual. Um, we are live streaming to you from our studios in Fairhope, Alabama, from our studio PC there. That studio PC has our regular vMix preset up, but one of the inputs is, actually two of the inputs are vMix call inputs. One of them is this, which is my Microsoft Surface tablet, and the other one is a what do you call those things? A cell phone. Thank you. Cell phone that is set up over the work area behind me. So we've got two vMix call inputs. The audio right now is coming from the microphone array built into the tablet, and we'll switch over to the cell phone audio when we move over to that station. So it's a little unusual, but I think it'll be good. Thank you, Jim. Yes, indeed. Alan Bunt listening while he works. Now that's dedication. Dedication. You know, I do that sometimes too. I'll catch, you know, when I'm driving, especially, I can't watch, but I can listen. And a lot of times, you know, you get the feel of what's going on by listening. But if somebody says, put this and put it in there, well, I don't always get that part. Except to know that they were putting something in something else. So there we go. I'm using TeamViewer to communicate from, or actually to control the PC back in Alabama from the Microsoft Surface here in Florida. Down visiting family, and went down for a graduation for my middle son. Graduated with a master's degree over this past weekend, and then we decided to go ahead and just stay for Christmas since we were down here. No sense in driving all the way back to Fairhope and then driving all the way back down here again. So we're here for a little while. Let's see, we've got just a few minutes until showtime. Let's check a few other little details here and make sure we've got everything set right. Hello, Jim. Welcome from Sacramento. And John Simon is here from John Simonville. And let's see how we doing on that side. Looks like we're good there. We're good there. So we're actually live streaming. We're not live streaming from Florida. We're live streaming from Alabama, but we're sending the feed to vMix calls from here in Florida. And going back to Alabama, and the production PC in Alabama is live streaming to Facebook, Eastern Shore Broadcasting page. And then that page is being shared with the Streaming Idiots group. So technically it's in two places on Facebook. And then we're also live streaming to YouTube. And the YouTube live stream is embedded in our website at Eastern Shore Broadcasting. So we will have to see how all of that works out when the time comes. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed, huh? Fingers crossed. But that's, you know, that's kind of been the whole concept with Streaming Idiots, is that we're just trying things that are not normally tried. Yes, we know, or yes, I know there's a high likelihood of error or failure, but that's okay, because that's part of the deal. Let's try it. Let's see if it works. Let's see how well it works. If it works, then we can repeat it and do it again and again. What we're doing today is not unusual, you know, using vMix call, using a cell phone for vMix call, you know, doing a remote control of vMix. You know, that's not all unusual, but sometimes when you put all those pieces together, they don't always work as smoothly as we would like. So let's see if we can press don't have the X keys here, so we can't press the button. You know what? There needs to be a way. Oh, there is a way. There's a web browser. Let me see if I can pull that up. So I'm going to go to settings. You can't see what I'm doing here. We're going to go to shortcuts. Is that it? No, we're going to go to web controller. That's it. Web controller, and we're going to grab the website address. We're going to get all that. Just paint it. Control C it. Go to a browser. Put it in the browser. There we go. That's good. Let's go back to vMix Social, and let's view that page in vMix Social. Otis is here. Welcome, sir. Cinco's Amsterdam. Welcome. Glad to have you. I miss Amsterdam. I loved it. Okay, let's see which one of these buttons it is. Drum roll. Is it the drum roll? No, it's not the drum roll. Stinger, stinger, stinger. Cut direct, start recording, fade, fade, fade. Full screen audio, layers on, layers off. Let's, well, we'll just have to fake it. How about that? Fake it till you make it. So we're going to go to the Show tab here, and we are going to find the virtual, what is it called? It is called Virtual Opening. There it is right there. We're going to go to Virtual Opening, and we're going to go to Layers, and got main shot. Okay, that's good. And let's change the main shot to number 10. Number 10 is the main shot. This is the same shot right here, but that's okay. And turn that off. All right, so let's give this a try. We might just get lucky. All right, come on, guy, get up there where you belong. There we go. Let's try this. Hey, it worked. How about that? Welcome, I'm Tom Sinclair, and this is Streaming Idiots, and we're pretty close to the end of the edge of the earth and the end of the internet. So we're glad you're with us today. We're coming to you remotely from an undisclosed location in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's not that undisclosed, but we're on the road, and so we're kind of having an on-the-road setup, which is always kind of weird. Today I've got in front of me, and what you're seeing is my Microsoft Surface tablet and the microphone array that's built into it, and the webcam that's built into it. And that is a vMix call input for my PC back in Fairhope, Alabama, which is my production PC. So we've got a vMix call input going there. And then that, from Alabama, is being live streamed to Facebook and YouTube, and then being spread out from there as well. We have a second vMix call input for a cell phone that's set up right behind me, and we'll be using that for our forensic. Well, it's not really forensic. We're not taking it apart and analyzing it. We're building back. This is the fourth part of our PC from spare parts build, and we've identified all the parts. We've put all the parts together. We've made sure they work at the BIOS level. We've installed an operating system. We've installed vMix and a bunch of other kind of helper softwares. We have a capture card, and we're going to take all that now that we've built it, and we're going to take it apart and put it in a case. I went out this morning and found a local computer shop here in St. Petersburg, And if you're in St. Petersburg, it's Nick's Computer Repair. You want to go hang out with Nick. He's pretty knowledgeable guy. And he had a micro ATX. That's kind of the mid between the mini and the full size ATX. He had a micro ATX case that he sold me very reasonably. It was used, and I think it's going to be just the thing we need for our build. So let's move over to that corner and let's see if I can do this. We're going to go to the Show tab here, and we're going to go to the this tab and see if we can get that phone on. So let's go and move to it right now. Okay. Off. There we go. There we go. And we are at the PC. Now this is the system that we went out and got this morning. It is a formerly AMD Athlon 2 PC, which, as you can see, has been stripped of everything. Nick was kind enough to give me 2 thumb screws for the side panel. So let's go ahead and pull those. Set those aside. And then we can pull off the side panel. We'll set it aside. Notice inside of it, it's got the Windows 7 Home Premium license key. That's good. Might be able to upgrade that for a few bucks and proceed. This case has got a DVD player in it, and then space for another one, and then some small drives and other drives. We're not going to use any of that space. It's also got the ribbon cable here for the power and the reset switch and the hard drive switch and the power LED. We'll be able to use some of that, so let's just tuck that out of the way for a moment. It's also got, this is in the case now, it's got a connection for USB. This would be USB 2. So we'll put that one out of the way for a moment. And then it's got audio, HD audio, and then AC 97. So we'll probably use the HD audio portion of that. And we'll tuck that out of the way for just a second. It's also got a fan. So we've got a connection for the fan. It's a 3-pin connection for the fan. So since it's 3-pin, we know that that means the fan can be controlled by the motherboard, turning it off and on, speeding it up and down. So we'll tuck that out of the way. What we don't have, and this is a shot inside the case, what we don't have is the back plate. I left that back at the studio. So if we get all this together and working well, I'm going to have to take it all apart and put the back plate in. Just press into that opening right there. So we've got also in the bottom, if you can see right here, a series of what they call standoffs. And they're just little risers that have a threaded hole in them. And we're going to put our motherboard right here in that spot. And the motherboard, as you may or may not be able to see, has got holes in it. I cheated. I went to make sure that the motherboard holes would line up with the standoffs, and they do. So we're going to go ahead and slip this guy in there. And you can generally tell, I mean, if you've got the back plate in, you can generally tell if the motherboard is fitting correctly because the back plate will have some holes for these audio jacks, and you'll interface with those quite nicely. You can also tell by looking down from the top and picking out a hole in the motherboard and being that lines up with the standoff. Okay, looks like we're lining up with all of the standoffs. And you know what I just remembered? I don't have any screws. Let's see if I can steal some screws from somebody. I have 2 screws. was working on a build here yesterday for a client. I've got some screws left over from that. Let's see if any of those will work for this mother. So we've got just a little screw there. And the driver. See if we can get one of these to hold this motherboard in place. We'll replace it with the right screws later if this works. Yeah, that looks like it's going to work. The important thing about the screw and the motherboard is, or one of the important things about the screws and the motherboard, is that the holes that these screws go in are also where the motherboard grounds itself to the chassis. So if you use the wrong screws that don't have a big enough head to them, I don't know if you can see this screw head right there. This is big enough to help the grounding spot take effect. So we're going to put these 3 screws in. We're shy 3. That's okay. So what we've got now is a motherboard semi-firmly in place. And it's not going to come loose, at least not the way it's right now. The other part in our process is we've got our salvaged EVGA 850 watt power supply. And just disconnect this for a second. This goes to the SATA drives, which we will install shortly. So let's go ahead and get this power supply in there. And you want to be really careful at this point. The power supply is really, really heavy. If I were to drop it, I could possibly damage the motherboard, break off a component, all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you, nothing good comes from dropping something inside of a PC case. All right, let's see if we can get that there. And generally, there's only one way to get these guys in. Sometimes the case will have, if the power supply is in the bottom, there'll be a vent in the bottom of the case so that the power supply fan can vent out the bottom. In this case, the power supply is located at the top, and there isn't a fan, there isn't a hole in the top. So we will let the fan just discharge, or actually, it sucks in from the back and discharges out. So we're going to let it discharge out into the PC, the motherboard area. All right, so I've got 4 screws here. Let's get one queued up on the screwdriver. If I can down to this level and get the holes in the power supply lined up with the holes in the case, and I can put a screw in there. Looks like there's some alignment pieces here. Oh, there it is right at the top. There's a little tab down here at the bottom, and another tab at the top, kind of hold the motherboard in the right location. Come on. Oh, there's a little piece of debris from the previous motherboard there. So let's see if that. One more. We'll try to push. So we're at it. You know, obviously we are taking something that wasn't necessarily made to be on the front. Okay, we've got one screw lined up here at the top. Let's see if we can leverage the other one. Back. There we go. So we screwed in there. Just some gentle persuasion, maybe. I think. Push too hard and break something. Let's try a side plate. That, I think, is going to do it. Let's see. You know, the things, putting things together that you've never put together before, you make certain assumptions. And sometimes those assumptions are accurate. Sometimes they're not. Let's see what we got. Not being sure. Yeah, that's really good. Out, out of square. So we'll put a couple of screws in here. Again, we'll come back later and put the full complement of 4 screws in. So we'll put 2 in for the setup. This power supply actually has two on-off switches on it. The O being off and the 1 being on. And it's also got a little eco switch over here. And we're going to turn that to the off position. We don't minimize in any shape or form. I'm going to bring the camera down so we can see a little bit more here. Let's see if we can get in where we can see better. There we go. So we've got some connectors that we want to hook up to. Right down here in the front is where the audio connector is going to hook. Right there, kind of in the middle of this side, is where the USB connector is going to hook. And then this kind of yellowish gold plate right here is where our on-off switch and reset are going to hook up. And I don't know if we can get it close enough on that, but you can see they're just a series of pins there, and there are pins on the other ones too. But this particular ribbon cable gives us 4 different connectors, and each one of the connectors is labeled. So we need to go to a document in order to see what the label would be. So let's see if we can come back over here and go to PDF. There we go. And this is called the system panel. And so the system panel, which is located right there on the side, has the different pinouts like that. And just for the sake of argument, I've drawn a little drawing right here so that I've got that easily understood, so that when the time comes to plug these guys in, we can. One thing that we found out is that the power LED is actually a pin space pin, which means it would take up 3 spaces, but the power LED connection that we have is only 2 spaces, so we may just not use that. Our motherboard is complete. We've got RAM, we've got the CPU, we're now plugged in, and we now need to put in our video card and our capture card and our 2 drives. So let's get to work on that and see if we can get this camera to cooperate and get us back in that spot. There we go. There we go. All right, so we're going to go into the case. We're going to take out some of the back plate covers. Take out one right here for the graphics card, and then the next one over. I'm going to go ahead and skip a space. And what we've got back here is one that basically just pushes out and was never removed. And then we bend it and get it to fall out so that we've got a space. We've left a space in between for a little air. So we'll put our graphics card first, and that just slides right in. There's a little slot back here at the very back of the case and the motherboard where it slips in. Sometimes you have to put a little fudge right there to get it seat, and then it seats into the PCIe Express, the PCI Express X16 slot here. And the nice thing about this Madewell card is that we can go to X1 So let's take the detail off of it. Pop it just right there, there. Grab a screw, screw it in. This particular video card, so we've got a video output card, that's for our monitor, the video input card or capture card for our camera. The video output card, the graphics card, doesn't require power, so we're not worried about power. Before we get too far, we probably ought to do something with these guys. We can work ourselves into it, paint ourselves into a corner. We don't get this put in there. USB, we'll do that in a second. Let's go ahead and do the audio first. So that's the furthest back in the corner. Back out. Yeah, we're going to take the card back. So we got ahead of ourselves. You don't get ahead of yourself too many times before you start thinking and saying, well, I could see it. I could even do something else. We're not going to use this guy, so we're just going to wrap it. So right, we'll put it later. And I don't know if you can see, but we've got holes here that engage the pins that are down in the case. And there's a blank there, and that'll match up to the blank down there. So flashlight, it's always helpful. Plug that guy in. Plug in. USB here. He's got a blank too, so that'll really plug correctly. And then let's do a push the whole way. Now we're going to take our ribbon cable and check our pinout guide. Make sure that we have the right ones in the right spaces. So reset is going to there. There is reset. Pull some wires back from it so we can work with. We'll put it down in space. Yep, and next to space, the other side of space is the power. That's I think that's probably the most important one. Power switch, because that's what turns it on. If the reset switch in the wrong place, you probably won't hurt anything. If you get the power switch in the wrong place, nothing will work. Then we want to do a hard drive down at the far end, same end as these, down at the far end. So and the power switch, fortunately, is a double right here, 2-wire double connector. Need one that would have a blank in it, so we're just going to wind this guy down. Back zip tie him so that he doesn't get caught up in the fans. Okay, so we've got the audio connected, we've got the USB connected, and we've got the switches, what they call that system panel. We've got the system panel connectors connected. We've got our video card in. Let's put our capture card back in. There's some of these other wires out to the side. This guy slides right in there. Slides into the slot. Screw in. Now let's figure out how to mount these drives. Generally, we would use a cradle. Let's just pull that. This is the solid state drive with 28 gig Samsung. Then we've got a Western Digital black 500 gig hard drive. We've got the power cable. So let's go ahead and plug the power cable. SATA. So This is what's called a modular power supply, which is really nice because it doesn't give you a bunch of wires. You just plug in the one you want. Fortunately, this power supply came with SATA cables. Since it's modular, there are a lot of blanks back here that aren't filled. So where are we going to put these guys? We're going to put these guys. Line up with any of these holes. No, no, that way. Well, we would need a bracket that we don't have. What can we do to, what we can do? I wouldn't do this, and I would only do this temporarily, but we can hot glue these guys in. So let's do that. Let me get the hot glue gun warming up here. Gotta have a hot glue gun. And you have to be traveling with your hot glue gun, hot glue. So I'm gonna go just off camera right here, get this guy plugged in and warmed up. And hot glue is a great way to secure things. For example, our little power switch wire over here. Those have a tendency to come off in shipping. The USB cable, the audio connection. Oh, it's down right here. And so a little dab of hot glue will help keep those from coming loose in shipping. All right, so this is a chassis fan right here. It's already zip tied together. There's a connector on the motherboard that says chassis fan. Go ahead and make those two pointed. And while we do, we'll wait for our glue gun to hook up. And we've got a loose wire here. Well, it's not loose, but it's loose enough that it could get into the CPU fan. That's not a good solid, right? So we want to secure that out of the way so it doesn't get into this fan or into that. It wouldn't be so bad if it was in this one, but this one will cause our CPU damage if it doesn't run. So while we're waiting for that, the other, let's go ahead and we've got some connectors on the motherboard, one back here on the back, one on the side, where we hook up power to the motherboard. Let's take a second and do that. Do this first. It has a clip on one side, and that clip goes back. So we're going to nestle this down here. And it's kind of out of the way. Pop it in until it clips. There we go. Then we have another one on the side here that is marked. Probably can't make it out, but it says CPU. So we'll push those just out of the side. Later on, we can come back and zip tie those so that they stay out of the way back there. Take this CPU guy and this 8-pin CPU power receptacle there. Then we've got one left over here. This is marked VGA. This would be for a video card that might require power. So some of your higher end cards will require power. We're just going to leave that one in here so we've got it if we ever upgrade our video card. This one back there, tie it off later. Which leaves us with our SATA cable for our drives. And let's see if our hot glue gun is hot glue enough to do it. Looks like it is. All right. So we do there. Want to leave, we've got two connectors here. We want to leave enough so we can't put it like that. We could put it like that. Have room for both of them. There and there. Let's just try that. The big B or hot glue right there. That'll be enough to hold that drive in place. Big blue stick. And again, this would only be temporary till we could get proper cradle to put this in. So, side. Yeah, that's going to work. It's going to work. So we've got a SATA cable that we're going to plug into the motherboard, and that's going to carry data, SATA data. The newer motherboards, of course, will be able to take solid-state drives that plug in directly to the motherboard. It's called an M.2. Gently put that there. Yep. Okay. Another SATA cable. Take that to the motherboard. This particular motherboard has 6 SATA connections, and they're all facing towards the rear, which doesn't hurt anything. It's just harder for us. Okay, so we've got both SATA connectors. So now we're going to tuck some sections wire there. 2 of these connectors. Other than like that without pulling it. Yeah. That guy's going to plug in there. That guy's going to plug in there. Do you have any parts left over? We've got a cable for our Magewell. We've got gone out of that case, and those are spare parts. Another system. So I think we're done. I think we're done. Let's fire this rascal up, see if it works. So we'll leave it side off for now. Clean up some of our mess here. We can bring in a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse and see if we have a system that is viable. Now, it was viable the other day because we built it outside of the case and we installed the operating system, installed vMix and some other things. We've got a keyboard and a mouse, and I went ahead and I'm using just a little wireless dongle, keyboard, mouse, and I'm just going to plug it up USB back here. And that just means fewer cables and less mess. Less mess, less fuss. We need a power cord. Got a power cord here. And step in front of you for just a second. Plug in. You said we're good. Well, oh, there we go. There we go. So we've got a power cord plug into our EVGA 850 oversized power supply here. Make sure the power is off. And then let's bring in a monitor. Some more of that stuff on that. This guy just came out of the box and we haven't even pulled the plastic off the front yet. This particular monitor is HDMI, and we happen to have HDMI on our graphics card. Let's give that a try. And then we need to plug power into the monitor. We had this plugged up earlier, so let's plug that up here now. See input right there. Go. Go. So let's see where we are. Good shot of my derriere. Put power onto the monitor. Turn the power switch onto the PC. And let's see if the on-off button works. There we go. We got fan on. Fan came on here. Looks like we're booting. How about that? It works. Well, so far. Looks like it's going to boot. It did. Yes. So we did that in record time. Just under half an hour to build this system into its case. Let's see. Let's go over this way for just a second. So we've got our motherboard in. Again, not held in by the number of screws we need. Got our power supply in, held in by 2 of 4 screws. We've got our 2 drives, 2 SATA drives, solid state and hard drive, held in by hot glue. And then everything else is connected as it should be, with the exception of the power light connector on the ribbon cable, which we couldn't do because it's not compatible with the cable for this case is not compatible with this motherboard, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. But it looks like we're on and working. Let's see if our mouse and keyboard will do things. Mr. Mouse here, where are you? And we start vMix. I bet we can. There we go. Yeah. So we've got a mouse that works. We've got software that runs. We're not hooked up to the internet at this point, but we could. Can we demonstrate that this actually works? Let's plug into the internet, and we'll say yes to be a network. And we'll bring up a page here. And let's go to YouTube. No internet. Give it another try. There we go. YouTube. And what about streaming idiots? And what about live now? And what about live now? What about live now? What about live now? What about live? And what about monitors that have speakers in them? And what about monitors that have speakers in them? And what about monitors? Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So there we go. Let's see. Let's swap this camera around for just a second. So yeah. Whoops, that's a little close, isn't it? Let's try that. That's the deal. That's the deal. It's a PC build. Now again, it's taken. This is the 4th week, and it is taken a little while. Cinco is asking what type of motherboard is it? It is an Asus H87M Pro.
The M means it's a micro ATX. It's an 1150 pin motherboard, so it takes an older CPUs. The CPU in it is an Intel i7 4770, which is a quad-core CPU, and I think about 3.2 gigahertz, something like that. Suitable for a single live stream, maybe a single camera production, nothing fancy. It would do well as a backup or a PC for streaming. So there we go. Yeah. Yep. It is, I would say it's probably serviceable. My intent is to probably gift this to a church somewhere that can't afford a system, and it was just made with spare parts, and then we'll put a vMix license on it. So if you know a church that is that wouldn't be streaming otherwise, or is streaming from their phone or some sort of cobbled up network, this is a I would say low to mid-level streaming system, and obviously we have to go back with a bunch of zip ties and brackets and things like that to put it back the way it should be. But it will work. It will work. It will do single camera capture and bring in audio. So there you go. So that wraps up our series on building a PC from spare parts. If you have questions, you can shoot me an email, tom@easternshorebroadcasting.com, or you can go to our website, easternshorebroadcasting.com, and there's a contact page there. If you'd rather have a system that wasn't built from spare parts, well, we do that too. I design and build systems that are intended for live streaming for churches and schools and universities, sports teams, stadiums, you name it, TV stations, radio stations, yes, indeed. So I'd be happy to talk with you about what your specific need might be. So we're going to move over to post-show here in just a second. So if you have some questions about this, you can post them in post-show. If you're watching this on Facebook in the Streaming Idiots group, come on over to our webpage, easternshorebroadcasting.com, and click the Watch Live tab. And that way you can get in on the chat and ask your questions, because we don't have the ability, at least I don't have the ability here in this crazy setup to see your comments at this point. So let me get over to the PC over here, and we will get into post-show with the push of a button. With the push of a button. With the push of a button. He keeps saying with the push of a button. So, yeah, let's go back to this shot. There we go.
There we go.
So with the push
of a button. Alrighty. Let's see. Audio from one of these guys. Hold on just a second. There we go. That's what we need right there. So, what do you think? Questions, comments, concerns? Yes, there was echo. Sorry, that was my bad. I am operating under less than normal circumstances, shall we say. So could you do this yourself? I think you could. The trick is to come up with certain specific pieces that are compatible with each other. For example, the motherboard in this system is a Asus87M Pro, which is, Well, and the CPU is an i7-4770, which tells us it's 4th generation Intel i7. We're up to the 11th generations now. Look like the 12s are going to come out, you know, what, in the spring maybe? So it's an older system. Each CPU mounts on the motherboard, and the motherboard has a CPU receptacle that has a certain number of little pins on it, little wires. And the number of pins is what kind of determines whether the CPU will fit a particular motherboard. This one happens to be an 1150. There is actually one called the 1151 that's still being sold and still active. I think it's, you know, 9th generation CPUs, but an 1150 and an 1151 are not interchangeable. But the 1150 works just fine. As we can see, it'll run Windows 10 just fine. Probably won't run Windows 11, but I can't imagine. I don't anticipate switching to Windows 11 anytime soon. If I did, you know, I'm going to be a late adopter on that one. A lot of times I'm an early adopter, but frankly, I don't want the headaches. I don't want to be Microsoft's Windows 11 bug man. And in fact, vMix hasn't approved vMix for Windows 7 use yet either, even though some people are doing it. It's just not what they should be. Sorry about the AC noise in here. I forgot to turn that off before I started the show. So that's what that background noise is. What else would you need? Motherboard, CPU, RAM, and the RAM would have to be compatible with the motherboard. You would check the specs on the motherboard, and generally, if you can get the model number of the motherboard, you can Google that, go to the manufacturer's website, and to the specific page for that model number. And keep in mind, this one's pretty old, but we were able to find it. And there you can get the other specifications, but you can also download the owner's manual, which will give you the specs you need to tell you about the RAM. Most every motherboard that's in existence in the last 15 years has got a SATA connection on it. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. And so you should at least be able to connect a solid state drive like I did. They also make an adapter, a PCIe adapter, a little card that will fit into one of the slots that will carry an M.2 solid state drive as if it were directly connected to the motherboard. Those are not expensive, I think $20 or $30. Not something that I would try to find used or in a, you know, on eBay, but I guess you could. So drives, RAM, motherboard, CPU, cooler for the CPU, and generally coolers have they generally have 4 legs, and the legs are, the distance between the legs generally is determined by the size of the CPU. So you want to make sure that whatever cooler you use, if it didn't come with the motherboard, make sure that it's compatible size-wise with the motherboard. The case we got was again an older case. It had an older AMD Athlon processor in it. This was from Nick's at Nick's Computer Repair in St. Petersburg, Florida. So if you're in the area and need repair, go see Nick. Tell him Tom sent you. And the case was nothing fancy. In fact, the case came with a power supply. We pulled the power supply out because I didn't know anything about it. And it was a 300. We put in an 850, which of course is going to be way more than what's needed. But one of the interesting things about power supplies is that over time, they tend to get a little weaker. They lose their zap, they lose their zing. And so an 850 watt power supply may have started as an 860, if you were to measure it, may now just be an 830. But heck, we don't even need 800. We probably don't need 700. We probably don't even need 600 for what we're doing. We may not even need 500. So this power supply should be good for the life of everything else in the PC. Does anybody actually use spinning drives anymore? Says Alan in chat. Well, Alan, I do. Because I have them. It's one of those situations. If I'm going to go into the store and I've got a choice between a solid state drive and a hard drive, a spinning drive, and I have the budget, I'll get the solid state drive any day because it's faster. But if I have hard drives, either older ones that I can repurpose that I think have enough life left in them, or newer ones, and I've actually got some new ones on the shelf back in the studio, I would use those. The system that I built for my church has a hard drive as the storage drive. I think it has a 500 gig solid state drive as the main drive, and then a terabyte hard drive backup for storage. And our storage need is not great. We're recording 1080p 30, and the 7200 RPM hard drive is fast enough to do that. And it's large enough that we've got, 2 or 3 years worth of recordings on there. I don't know why we're saving them, but we have them. They're also in the cloud on YouTube and Facebook. But if we ever needed the recording, we've got it there. So, the only other way that I would be convinced on to use a spinning drive is if the budget was just absolutely so bone thin that the $50 difference or $40 difference or $60 difference between a hard drive and a solid state drive, if that was a deal killer, I guess we would use the platter drive. But so I think it's viable, but I don't think it's critical, and it wouldn't be my first choice or my second. My first choice would be an M.2 solid state drive. It looks like almost like a stick of RAM, except the connection is on the thin side, not on the wide side. I would pick that first, and then I would pick a SATA solid state drive second, which is what we put into this machine right here. And all of the stuff in this machine was repurposed. I don't think there's anything new in it. New? Nope, nothing new. Everything was used somewhere else in something else. And if I don't find a home for this guy, maybe I'll just put him in the studio, turn him on, let him run, and see how long he'll run. Let him play YouTube videos, or might set him up as a streaming machine. We'll take an NDI feed on our network and stream it out on that machine, and just see how long it lasts. That would be interesting to do. Not a torture test necessarily, but an endurance test. Yep. So that concludes our build here. Let's see. Let's go over to this camera for just a second. And you can see him in the background, still going strong. Still have a little bit of work to do, but we've got a functional PC. I could very carefully transport this to church on Sunday, set it up, and do live stream with it. I could take it out to the football stadium on Friday night, do a live stream with only single camera, because that's all it's set up for. But if we had some NDI feeds or some vMix call feeds, like I'm doing right now, vMix call into that PC, for sure we could do it. We could set up a 3 or 4 camera feed, I bet, on that machine with just one single capture card. In fact, we might do that. That might be step 5 of this process, is to put it in use, show it off. We won't do that next week, because next week we're going to be off for Christmas. But the week between Christmas and New Year's, maybe set it up like that. See how many different inputs, video inputs, we can get into it before it goes up in smoke.
Not that we want to smoke it, but you know what. Well, look, it's been great hanging out with you guys today. Appreciate those that spent some time. It was a treat. And again, if I can help you with a system for you, or you know somebody that we can help with this system, let me know. You can get it at our website, research for podcast. So, send you out with some fireworks. Some fireworks. Yeah, here's some fireworks. Thanks for watching.